This is probably going to be a formality in the House. In the Senate, there was some opportunity potentially to slow this down because there was a bipartisan support required in the Senate that did not end up mattering because, as I said, there were only 29 votes against it in the Senate, which means a bunch of Republicans, 21 to be exact, voted with the Democrats to pass this. Now we are going to go to U.S. Representative Bob Good, who joins us to talk about what's happening on the Hill today. Congressman Good, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Your reaction to the omnibus bill passing in the Senate today?
Well, I expect Democrats to be Democrats. We know the Democrats are just reckless spenders on their crazy progressive leftist policies, but I don't expect Republicans to partner with them. As you were pointing out in your intro there, Republicans had the ability to block it in the Senate. If we just had 9 Republican senators vote for it, but no more than that, then of course it wouldn't have been able to advance. But it's terrible that Republicans would be part of this to strip away the leverage the American people want us to have in the House to fund the government through September at the Democrat levels, what the Democrats want, to give them everything they want this lame duck session, is an egregious abuse of the trust of the American people who vote for Republicans in elections.
Congressman Good, what do you attribute that to? Why were so many Republicans eager to vote for this bill? And Mitch McConnell, in fact, did seem somewhat eager. Is this just the fact that people had goodies included in this omnibus bill?
Well, you did have an incredible amount, $15 billion worth of earmarks in it. You know, earmarks are how votes are purchased to get folks to vote for legislation they may not totally agree with. We're trying to ban those in the House. That's one of the reasons why I oppose Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. He's not joining our efforts to ban earmarks in the House. But certainly you see this coming out of this bill, this omnibus bill, $15 billion, $500 million of it for Inhofe and $500 million of it for Richard Shelby, these departing senators who are getting big amounts of legacy spending. But it just reveals that Democrats are always Democrats, but many Republicans are really Democrats as well, in the way that they don't have any concern for the true values that are supposed to be the Republican Party, and fiscal responsibility is part of that. For them to do this when we have nearly $32 trillion in national debt, we're approaching $100,000 in national debt per U.S. citizen, an incredible amount of money, and yet to layer this on with more spending that's harmful to the economy, that's harmful for inflation, and more importantly, it's very harmful to the fiscal future, the financial future of young people across the country.
And Congressman Good, Chuck Schumer, who is the majority leader, the Democrat majority leader in the Senate, he said the omnibus was a metaphor for the last 2 years. Let's play clip 1.
And I would say that the omnibus was an appropriate metaphor for the last 2 years. A lot of Sturm and Drang, a lot of ups and downs, but at the end, a great result that really helped the American people. That is true of the omnibus.
Congressman Good, is this a great result that really helps the American people?
You know, the most radical leftist extreme agenda that country's ever experienced has been in the last 2 years. No one knew how great Joe Biden was going to be at being a bad president, but just have $10 trillion in new spending in the first 2 years of administration has never happened in the history of the country. Of course, our national debt is a greater percentage of our GDP than it's ever been outside of World War II. We've got an invasion at our southern border with 5 million illegals coming in. We've surrendered American energy independence. We've got 40-year high inflation. We've got our schools are focused on indoctrination of our kids instead of academic excellence. America's national standing has diminished on the world stage. Our military is weakened by the woke policies that are being forced upon our personnel. By what standard of measurement would you say the country is better off now than it was 2 years ago under the harmful policies of the Democrat Party? But once again, for Republicans in the Senate to participate in doing this to the American people on Christmas Eve nearly here, to pass this to harm the American people further with Democrat policies being advanced by Republicans is just an egregious violation of trust. All Republican voters across the country ought to vote against every senator who voted to advance this legislation.
Congressman Good, one final question for you. This debate over the omnibus has been wrapped around a debate over the border as well and the conflict there. And this omnibus bill includes $45 billion more in aid for Ukraine, which is not universally opposed, but there is some concern about that. But they couldn't find any money to secure the border, and all the money allocated for the border is simply to facilitate the migration across the southern border. How do you explain these priorities?
Unbelievable. The Democrat Party does not care about our southern border. Apparently, these 18 or so senators don't care either. But to your point, we're fighting. We're giving some border support, border security support to countries in the Middle East. We're fighting or giving money to Ukraine to help fight for their border sovereignty with Russia, but yet we can't do anything to secure our own border. And the $45 billion allocated for Ukraine, combined with the $65 billion that's already been spent, that's over $100 billion, which equates to about $200 million per House district. $200 million per House district. What do you think each of the 435 House districts could do with $200 million for them instead of sending it off to Ukraine for something that's not in America's national security interest?
Congressman Bob Good, thanks so much for your time today.
Be with you. Merry Christmas.